we are looking at some random shapes. These are all screen plane. If you pick one and look at it in your object info palette, you can see what they are. We made them distinct only from the standpoint of illustrating grouping. In our workflow, we use grouping a lot. I find that some people don't seem to use it at all, but there's a couple things that make grouping very beneficial. Grouping is under the modify command. If you have something selected, you can group it. Now, let's just group this single item. And if we say edit group, notice everything else disappears because we've set our preferences not show other items while in the edit mode. And in this case, we're in the edit group mode. You can barely see in the corner, there's a little exit up there. We can exit. We can go back into the mode. I'm using the keyboard to go in and out. The keyboard is available right here. You can see edit group and exit group. So there's exit group, and since I have a group selected, it'll say edit group. So instead I use these keyboard commands. It makes for very rapid editing and drawing. In our workflow, we do a lot of editing. Initial designs are done, but then client reviews things and we change things around. So the keyboard becomes essential. So the setting that we want to uncheck would be this one, show other objects while in the editing mode. Instead of seeing other things, we don't want to see other things. For efficiency's sake, you can always turn this on and off. And in your toolbar, you can have an icon that lets you click on it and it comes and goes quickly without having to go to this preference. You can have a script in a palette that lets you go in and out of the mode, show others. So there's different ways of doing that. We'll show those in a bit. From the standpoint of editing an item, you see this as a single item, but I can make it into a group. Again, if we look at this, it says it's a group. If I go into the group, it says it's a circle, so it's one item. The advantage of that is that you can look at something very distinct and keep it separate from other items. The group can have a class, and the item inside can have a class. So now if I say ungroup to this, and I pick several of these, and I say group, I can now grab them and move them around as one item. If I look at this rectangle and I move it over, you notice now it goes to the front and it covers up these other items. I can also move this group to the front, but notice how the hierarchy of these stays constant. I can double click on this to edit it. I can say send to the back, and I can say send to the front. And I've changed the hierarchy inside the group, but when I move the group itself is on top of these other shapes. So I maintain the hierarchy in the group without having to worry about it. And if I go to a point where something is to the front of it, I either want it or don't want it, but when I say go to the back or send the group to the front, I know that it is one step up from this object here. The reason we do a lot of grouping is we will have items that are put together in a certain arrangement, like these three rectangles. We will say group, and we want them to stay that way. We may want to take this arrangement and move the arrangement, and we want the arrangement to stay together. Now there's a couple things you can do with that too. You can actually come inside of here and you can pick these items, and let's pick the middle one, and we're going to say lock. And here you see that lock is part of the contextual menu. You can put this into your contextual menu if it's not there already. In the workspace editor, it's right here at the bottom of your tool menu, and you can edit the current workspace. So now this is locked, but I can still move the group. But when I go to edit the group, let's say I want to do an arrangement where I pull on one and push on the other, but this one stays, and we could actually take two of these, for example, and lock them so that I cannot move those two, and I can move this one. And then when I exit it, the group itself moves. If we say scale and we say 2, and we say OK, everything in the group scales. If we go to edit and we pick all these and we say modify scale and we say 2, only the 1 changes. But again, if we are outside here in the group, we can say modify scale and we say 2, and then everything changes proportionally. If we take all of these items now and we put them together as multiple groups, I'm going to take this, here's another group, I'm going to take these two groups and group them together. Now I can pull these, and they are similar in their relationship when I move them, yet in relationship to this green or this blue square, they are different. And again, the hierarchy remains the same. If I move this green square to the front, it goes on top of the group, as opposed to having a green square that would only move up one layer at a time, depending on how these other items are all arranged. Again, you can have items that are in different classes inside of a group, and you can have them turn on and off, and the group will maintain itself. If we double click, we see we have these two groups in here. Let's double click on this group. Let's pick this one item, and we're going to put it into odd class. We're going to call it odd class. We're not going to worry about what the class is. We simply know that it's in something else here. This is in none class. None class, that's kind of the default in VectorWorks. And what we're also going to do is we're going to make a view here. We're going to zoom in, and then we're going to say Save View. We're going to want to save this view. And when we save this view, we're going to say Beige Square. Turn off Unified View because it gives us way too many problems. We're going to say Layer Options Active Only. And Classes, we're just going to keep everything like it is. So we're going to say an OK and OK. We'll show you in a minute what this leads to. So we're going to say Exit Group. We're going to say Exit Group. We're going to say go all the way out here. Now some people say, gee, when I edit group, I have to double click on this one, then I have to double click again on this one, and that takes a lot of time. Then I got to say Exit Group. Then I got to say Exit Group again. Well, a couple things can happen. Let's make this into a group. Let's make this into a group. If I want to get to the blue rectangle, it's easy. I just double click, and there I'm inside this group. I'm now selecting this blue rectangle, and what else do I have? And a group. So now if I want to get this beige rectangle, I have to double click on this group, then I have to double click on this group, then I have to double click on this group. So now I've gotten to this beige rectangle. Now it seems pretty simple. How do I get back out to where I was? Well, we're going to right click, and we're going to go to the top level. Top level. Now that's available from the drop down menu, but here it's in the contextual menu, which makes it easy to get to, and we're back to where we started from. A minute ago we saved a view. It had to do with these rectangles. It was several layers deep. We're going to go back to that save view. We're going to hit the save view, and notice we have now gone all the way down to where that beige rectangle is without having to double click or select and use the pull down menus to say edit group. Again, what we did was in this situation with this class setup, with this edit mode in the groups, we saved a view. You go up to your menu bar here, you say Save View, you set up your parameters, and you give it a name. So now what happens is I can click and say Top Level, and I can use this Save View, and I'm going between these two quite quickly. So let's look at the entire drawing, and let's turn off a class. Let's turn off this odd class, and you notice that beige rectangle's gone. So I'm going to double click on this. I'm going to double click on this. I'm going to double click on this, and here the relationship of these two groups is set. But now I'm going to move this over. Since I moved that over, my saved view is no longer valid from the standpoint of getting back to where I was, but it's close. Notice also that the beige rectangle has appeared because when I saved a view, I told it I wanted to see that class. A minute ago, we were outside here in the drawing with all the classes on. We were not editing a group, so we didn't see it. But the advantage here is inside the group, we can turn off this class. When we go to edit this, let's turn it around. Notice that there's handles on here. When we move it, you can kind of see the ghost image of that item that's turned off. Again, it's inside of a group. The group has the class of none. The items inside the group have the class of none, and then our hidden one, which we can't get until we turn the class on. It is in this odd class. So what's the takeaway here? When you use groups, you can put things together. You can ungroup them quite quickly. Sometimes I have this habit of taking something, I say group, edit group. I can look at it. I can come back out. I can then ungroup it and it returns back to what it was and where it was, but it gives me that opportunity to look at it by itself. On your toolbar, you can have a little icon to click on that lets you turn on the option to see other things while in a group mode. Here we're editing this group, and I can turn on other items. Notice it's a single layer deep. If I exit out of here, I can see the next level. You can see it's just the outline of these other ones. And when we completely come out of here, we realize that we can see what was behind it. But it simplifies editing for a lot of situations. And the object of putting things in groups is either a temporary or permanent situation. Usually people think of permanent grouping as making it into a symbol, which is possible. Anytime you make things into a symbol, it's logical for repetition, but sometimes making things into a symbol is simply a good way of working, even if there's only a single item on your drawing. The grouping lets you move things in one shot without having to really get a hold of them. For example, if I grab this from anywhere inside, I'm not going to stretch these. A quick example of what I'm talking about is I could take this, and suddenly they're no longer the square shapes, they're more rectangular. And what I want to do is simply move them. So moving them, for example, I have the shift held down and it moves them horizontally, is easier because I grab out in the middle of the group and everything comes along for the ride. I don't have to select these three. When I have things grouped together, it makes it even more advantageous that these three are maintaining their hierarchy. The relationship between this group and this group are remaining constant. Edit. The group and ungroup are here. The edit group and the exit group are here. But you see all these can be done from the keyboard, and the single letter indicates this is a very common thing to do and a very easy thing to do. Group early, group often. Set up your contextual menus so that things like ungroup or top level are available to you. You have to be down in an edit mode to get the top level out. There it is. And then understand that items inside can be locked. For example, if I show you this again and say scale, and say 2, only that one that's unlocked scales. But if I'm outside of this group and I say scale, then all of them will scale proportionally. Hope this helps your workflow. There's many ways to draw in VectorWorks. That's how I drew it. Thanks for watching.